Okay, so we've cloned the beer repository. It should be running. I should be able to search and have that work. I should be able to view individual beers, have that work. What I want is some kind of administrative backend. I want to be able to log in with a username and password and be able to add, edit, update, and delete beers in my system and eventually assign them categories. And so I am going to add the ActiveAdmin gem to do this. And so this begins with going to the gem file, and that's just in our project root. Above where we have the different blocks for development and test, I'm going to add 2 gems in here. Gem ActiveAdmin, all one word, and gem devise. So ActiveAdmin is the gem that will create our admin backend. It's what's called a Rails engine. So Rails engines are the ability to take pre-made Rails apps and embed them in your Rails app. So ActiveAdmin is a pre-made Rails app that has its own models and views and controllers and routing. And by pulling in the gem, it's just going to import that entire Rails application, the admin application, into your app. Devise is probably the default auth gem that people use in the Rails community. There are other gems that people might use for auth, but usually the most common is Devise, and it handles username and password authentication. It'll do things like forgotten password links and emails. It handles like token-based authentication. It does most of the auth things that you would want to do. And so it gets paired with admin or ActiveAdmin to do the auth for ActiveAdmin. So with those 2 things in place, I'm going to drop to another console prompt. I'm in a bit of a weird state on my machine. I updated my version of Bundler, and the version of Bundler that I used to create this app was at an older version. And so that puts me into a bit of a state of conflict, but not so bad. In every Rails app, there is a bin folder, which is full of what are called bin stubs. And these are just pointers to the exact version of all of your toolings at the time you first installed your app. So if I want to use like the bundle version that I was using at the time that I created this app, I would just use the bin stub version of bundle, same as for Yarn and for Rails and for all the things. And so it's not that big of a deal for me. It used to be in previous version of Rails when we didn't have those bin stubs. It's just a way of locking your app down, not just in terms of the gems it used, but all of the tooling. So you can sort of get back to the exact state of your whole system when you created that app. It's like a log file, but for your tools. So what I'm going to do that I have to do a little bit extra beyond you is I just have to remove my gem file lock, and I don't think you'll have to do that. And then I'm going to do a .bin bundle install, and that will reinstall all my gems, including ActiveAdmin and Devise. You should be able to get away with just running bundle install. Now, mine went really, really fast because I ran it with the other section today, so I already have downloaded to my machine all the latest versions of all of the gems, so that didn't take very long. It went and grabbed local copies of all of the gems that it required, and if we look through that list, we would see that ActiveAdmin is in there and Devise is in there as well. So my app is now built on 108 different gems. I'm going to head over to ActiveAdmin to the documentation section. It sort of steps us through the process of how to get ActiveAdmin active. Step 1 was that gem file. I don't know why they don't include the part where you need to have gem devise. If you don't have devise in your gem file, the next step will fail. We do a lot of Rails G in working with Rails. So when we generate models or scaffolds or migrations, ActiveAdmin has added generators for us. So gems can add new generators to our Rails app. And the one that has been added, or the first one that we're going to use that's been added, is active_admin:install. So Rails generate active_admin:install. That is going to create a migration file for us that we can run that will give us the tables that ActiveAdmin needs, specifically like the users table. And it's also going to create some of the files and folders that ActiveAdmin works with. If we go and look at our DB seed script, we want to make sure that the line ActiveAdmin user.create has been put on a line all to its own. Sometimes the install script will put that line like at the end of your last line in the file, which is not what you want. So you want to make sure the line that says ActiveAdmin.create is on its own separate line in your seed script. What this is a way of getting an initial admin user into the admin users table. We could change this so that it wasn't as generic as admin@example.com with a password of password. We'll just leave that because we're in development mode. Also notice that at the very end here, ActiveAdmin puts this nice guard in here so that we don't accidentally run this in production mode and put a really horrible, simple to guess admin with password user into our production site. So this line would not even trigger if we ran the seed script in production. No, but it's still like the password's still pretty horrible. It is an actual domain. Yeah, so you never know. Like bots might just have that in their list of things to try. It was interesting. I submitted an API key to a GitHub repo a few days ago accidentally. It was like a Google Maps API key. And I got an email like a few minutes later from some kind of friendly bot telling me, hey, you just did a thing that you probably didn't want to do. I'm a friendly bot and I'm letting you know that. So I thought that was really cool. It didn't seem to be from GitHub itself. It seemed to be from some kind of security organization that was actively running. Did you? Okay, so, and do you know who it was? Like, did it posted to your Discord? That's really neat. So it's like, hey, you exposed your Discord API key. Yes, yeah. So I thought that was really cool. The other thing that GitHub does now is it scans your gem file for known vulnerabilities. And so you'll go to your repo and it'll be like, this repo has known security vulnerabilities. That's also, I think, a really nice, handy feature. Yeah, there you go. So I'm going to run a few things here. Rails DB migrate to get the admin users table. Rails DB seed, which will rerun my seed script, so it'll destroy the beers that are in there, recreate 50 new beers, and then it will create that initial admin user. And then I'll do some git. And at this point, I should be able to go to my application and go to /admin and restart my server. Yeah, that is a thing. So notice it's giving me an uninitialized constant ActiveAdmin. Usually when you get that message that it can't find a class that you know should be there, that's one of those cases where the server needs a restart. Not all gems require a restart, but gems that act as Rails engines do. So we'll kill the server and start it again. And now I should be able to go to oh yeah, that's another weird thing that ActiveAdmin does is it pollutes our global CSS styles. So you can see my app looks different now. And so at the end of this, if I don't remember, at the end of this, remind me to go and vendor the styles that ActiveAdmin checks into my application because I don't want those styles to leak out to the rest of my app. I'm sure. Because it also adds a bunch of JavaScript and stuff. It just makes the app heavier. So let's try to log in. Oh, I want the pointer to be recorded. I want to log in here with my admin at example.com, and the password is password. And there I am. This is the backend dashboard. Right now, there's not much I can do within it. This front page is configurable. So there is a file in an app admin folder called dashboard.rb that you can configure to put stuff into this front area. On a lot of Rails apps, what I will put it here is sort of like widgets that sort of show the state of the app. I might put like a Google Analytics widget or some kind of visualization of how many things we have in the database, or it'll be dependent on what the app I'm building, but I often use this front dashboard to give people a high level overview of the app. You can see admin users. There is my admin user. I could create new admin users with usernames and passwords. So I think it probably will let me. Let's see. Now I have to rerun the seed script. So it's not the end of the world. I would just go and it did. So let's yeah. This is the last one. This is you. And you could do that. So for all of the things that ActiveAdmin gives you, you can override all of its behavior. There we are. So I'm back. I'm just happen to be ID 2 now because the first one was deleted. Okay, so that's good. I'll go back over here, get status. I'm good. I now want to register with ActiveAdmin the beer model so that I can, up at this menu, have access to the beers. And so Rails generate ActiveAdmin resource. And again, this line is in the notes. So if you went to the ActiveAdmin docs, you would see the same thing, Rails generate active_admin : resource followed by the model name. And in our case, the model name is beer. I'm going to run that. And it creates a single file for me in an app admin folder. So there's a new folder in my admin or in my app subfolder where ActiveAdmin stuff goes. If I go to the admin backend and I reload it, I now have a beers section up here. And there's all my beers. I know. So it's made this lovely table for you with all of the columns that make up a beer, including the Rails managed ones like IDs, created at and update at. It includes this filtering section. When you have lots of data, that's really handy to be able to filter for a name that either contains or equals or starts with particular things. If you have dates in, you can pick like date ranges to filter on. It's a very powerful filtering system, especially when you have lots of data. And once you filter down to the data that you're concerned with, you can also export that data as CSV, XML, or JSON. So it's a nice full-featured filtering, and you could then pull it out to Excel and do some reporting on it there. It won't yet work for creating and updating. Like, notice what happens if I go to edit and I try to change the price of this beer from $10.23 to $56.13. And I click update beer, and I get this error that says forbidden attributes error. And what this means is that I have missed a step. This is a step that you have to do for every model that you register with ActiveAdmin. You have to create a list of permitted parameters that are editable. So you have to whitelist the parameters that you want to allow the user to be able to modify. This is the same thing that you have to do if you notice like how a scaffolded app looks when it receives posted data from a form. There's also whitelisting that has to happen, and this is because early versions of Rails were susceptible to a kind of attack called a mass assignment attack, where you could craft special forms that could allow you to change bits of data on the back end that you probably shouldn't be able to change. It was a vulnerability that was present in early versions of Rails, but that everybody knew about. And the core team, it had been brought into the core team's attention, like Rails has a mass assignment vulnerability. And at the time, the core team's response was like, yes, but in a well-written production app, people will have taken the steps that are required to make their app not susceptible to this attack. And then GitHub got hacked based on this attack, because GitHub is a large Rails application. And so what happened is someone, once again, posted this as an issue on the Rails project. And again, the core team came back saying, known issue, not a problem. Most well-written Rails apps will have solved for this. Well, it was the core team that said this, not Rails, or not GitHub. And then all of a sudden, the person that would post that issue started posting from the past and the future. And then they started posting as DHH, the creator of Rails. They took over his account. And it was all because of the fact that GitHub is a Rails project and it was susceptible to this mass assignment attack. And so that has now been fixed. That got the attention of the Rails team very quickly. It initially got that user banned from GitHub, but then GitHub later went back and been like, okay, we see that you were sort of white hat hacking to show that this vulnerability really exists. So yeah, so I tell that story mainly because of the fact that that's why we have to do this kind of whitelisting in Rails. This is one of the few places where Rails won't try to auto guess or based on conventions things for us. Anytime you're getting data from the outside world into your application that's going to go into a table, you have to whitelist. So if you look at a scaffolded Rails app, you'll see that being done with the params hash. And with ActiveAdmin, what we have to do is we have to go to the app admin folder and go to, there's a beers file in there. And in the comments, they explain what we need to do. And what we need to do is permit params, and then we have to name all of the params that we created on a beer. So you don't have to mention the ID or the created at and updated at, stuff that Rails manages, but a beer has a name, it has an alcohol amount, it has an IBU, and it has a price. So I have to whitelist all of that, and then I can remove these comments. That's just the way, that's the whitelisting command. That's like how you whitelist with ActiveAdmin, is to permit these following parameters. So once I've flagged those as permitted, I can now go and perform this update. So I go back to my beard that I'm editing. I'll reload this to show that the price was still at $10.23. I will now change it to $56. I will update it, and now it actually goes through. I should be able to change the name as well, dial down the alcohol amount and the IBU, and see all those things change as well. So that's good. We've permitted the parameters. We now can update beers. We can also create new beers. So if I try to click create beer on its own, ActiveAdmin knows about all of our validations, and it provides nice validation warnings. Name can't be blank, alcohol can't be blank, and it's not a number. So it's sort of pulling in the fact that my beers model had presence validations on everything and a numericality validation on price. So it knows about and can make use of our validations. And then I can create my beer here, 2.3%. Oh, I'll show you that as well. Create this beer. For every entry in your database, you can comment on it. So this is for if you had multiple administrative users working on this backend and they wanted to be able to leave a comment about a particular entry. It's just in the admin. Yeah. So it's like I might leave a note to the other administrators. Yeah, it's like, and it's for a particular row in a database table. This beer should not be given to the public. And then no, so you could probably sort of hack at ActiveAdmin to give that kind of finer grained permissions, but right now as it's set up, it's like an admin user is an admin user, and they are sort of all at the same kind of level. No, so it wouldn't be one where you would have like multiple different levels of admin, or you wouldn't allow your customers into your admin area because it's, yeah, you've got a blanket admin user. And then, yeah, you've got these comments. These are comments that have to do with particular resources. It's the equivalent of logging in as root to your app. Yeah. When I build quick Rails apps for clients, like the client and I will be the two admin users, and they'll be able to like update page, and there'll be like an area for their about page and their contact page and their data, and they'll be able to log in, and then I'll be able to log in as well. Okay, so that is one aspect of this app. The other one that I wanted to show off is what happens if I add something that has an association present in it. So I'm going to add a categories model and set up a one-to-many association between beers and categories, so that a category can belong to that a beer can belong to a single category, and a category can have many beers. So a simple one-to-many. And I'll just sort of show that ActiveAdmin will understand and work with that relationship to sort of show that it's quite a powerful system. It can also recognize when you have models that have been enhanced with a uploader gem. So if you're using like a gem like Paperclip or Carrier Wave, which allow file uploads, ActiveAdmin will pick that up. And when you go to create a new thing, there'll be a little file picker and you'll be able to upload. And so it's aware of how you might enhance a model as well. So let's go to the command line here. I'm just going to save my changes here. White listed beers columns. And now at the terminal, I'm going to do a Rails generate model category. And I'm just going to give a category just a single property, which is a name that is a string. So Rails G model category name colon string. So that went and created a migration for me and a category model. And then I also need to add to my beers table a foreign key over to that category. So I've created the category. Now I'm going to generate a migration, and I'm going to write the name of the migration in a particular pattern, and then Rails is going to recognize that pattern based on conventions, and it's going to write the migration for me. So I'm going to say add category to beers. So anytime we write the name of a migration, add something to something plural, Rails is going to assume that means add this column to this database table. And then I'm going to say that the category that I'm asking it to add references is like it's a foreign key. So references is the Rails type for that. So Rails G migration, so create a migration for me, add category to beers where the category is of type references. This is going to add a category ID foreign key to my beers. If we went and looked at that migration, we could see that. So I'll go to bring that command up again. If I go to my migrate folder, we have two migrations, one that's creating the categories table with the name, and then the other one that's adding to the beers table the category foreign key. And so all I need to do now is run those migrations. So I'll do a Rails db migrate to create the categories table and to add the foreign key category ID. You might have said reference instead of references. So just update your migration so that it reads like mine. Mm-hmm. There isn't. You have to always do it in that two steps, is like create the table and then add the foreign key. It would be nicer if you could, yeah, do it in one go, but it doesn't give us that ability. Yeah, yeah, that as well, right? SQLite is not a fully featured database, right? I don't even think under the hood it actually has data types. I think everything is type string in terms of SQLite 3. It just pretends. Okay, so there's a few things I want to modify. I want to open up this file that I already had open. This was my beers file in the admin folder. I need to add one more whitelist. So this is where we did that permit params. I need to add one more whitelist item here, which is the category ID that I just added to the beers table. Without adding that, we wouldn't be able to add new categories, associated categories to beers. So that's one thing I need to do. Another thing I need to do is do a Rails generate ActiveAdmin resource on category. So I'm registering the category model with ActiveAdmin so that it becomes editable within the admin dashboard. And then a new categories file will appear in this admin folder, and I'll need to do permit params on it. So I'm going to run my Rails G active_admin resource category. That created a AppAdmin categories file, and I can open it up, delete the comments from within it, and do a permit params. There's only one parameter in a category. It's the name. And then I'm going to actually go to the models themselves for the final step to set up the associations, the has many and belongs to associations in those two models. So in my models folder, I'll open up beer and category. So a beer belongs to a category singular by way of a category ID foreign key. So that's one side of the association. That's the ability now for any beer object to do dot category to get to its related category. So we could say like any beer object dot category dot name to get the name of that beer's category. And then the other side of the relationship gets defined in category, which is the fact that a category has many beers. And that should be all I need to do to stitch all those things together. So I've added the category model, I've migrated its table, I've set up the associations, I've whitelisted the appropriate things. I'll use git to added the category model, whitelists and associations. And now from my backend, there is a new categories section. I should be able to create a new category, like an ale and a stout and a pilsner. So I have a few categories now in the categories table, and I was able to add them by way of ActiveAdmin. Just like with beers, I can filter within this tool and download in different formats. And now for any given beer, I can either edit or create a new beer. And notice I have this drop down when creating a beer, which automatically has gone to the categories table, pulled all the categories, put them into the drop down, set their primary keys as the values for each one of those options so that when I create a new stout, for example, let's give it some kind of values here. I don't know, 623. That particular beer has a category. I can navigate to that category if I wanted to. I can also take existing beers, like my brew here, and assign it a value. And I can edit any of the ones I want and do the same. Filtering now has an extra ability. I can filter on category at the same time as any of the other things. So it's like, show me all the stouts. Well, there should only be one, but if I click filter, there it is. So it makes the filtering much more powerful because it knows about that association. And you see that there's a whole new column in the list of beers which shows the category as well, giving the ability to navigate to those categories if you wanted to, or see the ones that are missing categories versus those that have them. We can now also update the seed script so that it creates a bunch of categories to begin with and then assigns them, but we won't bother going there. Yes, it will. Well, it wouldn't fail. It would just create empty categories because I haven't put a constraint on what they're needing to be. Oh, because it's a foreign key. And does it force the presence of that foreign key? Okay, so yeah, which seems fair, right? You probably do want a category. So yeah, we would have to rerun the seed script or rewrite the seed script to better support categories now. Let me come see. And that's the quick introduction to ActiveAdmin. There's more to it. Like as I said, it'll recognize when you have something like carrier wave added to your application for file uploads, and it will allow you to upload files and images directly from ActiveAdmin. It's just a very quick and powerful way of adding this kind of authentication for a backend. I can see this being really helpful again for using Rails as an API, right? So you could have the front end of Rails up in API mode, and then the whole back end could be managed by way of ActiveAdmin. And then really, again, you would have an entire API built out for you with very, very little coding required. So even at the beginning of an application, if you're just prototyping things and you need to stand up a quick API, a combination of Rails in API mode with ActiveAdmin would be a really good solution for that. And I think that's where I will leave the lecture part of today's class. So I'm going to stop the video. Oh, wait. I almost forgot what I said I was going to do, which was vendor the styles. So that was the reason I wanted to do this extra thing, which is this. If you look at this front end of the application, this button, all of the fonts here, they've all been influenced by the styling that the ActiveAdmin engine brought into our Rails application. If I did a view page source here, you can see there's like all sorts of aspects of jQuery and jQuery UI. So jQuery is a dependency of ActiveAdmin. It's bringing that into the front end of my website. A bunch of other scripts and styles that it's brought in. I don't want those leaking out of ActiveAdmin into the front end of my application. And so I have to do what's called vendoring for that. So to do that, I'm going to turn off my server. See if I remember how to do this vendoring. There is a vendor folder at the root of all Rails projects. There it is, vendor. Inside of that vendor folder, I'm going to make a assets folder. And inside of that assets folder, I'm going to make a JavaScripts and style sheets folder. And so I'm going to go to this vendor folder here, and I'm going to create a new folder called assets. And inside of it, I'm going to create a style sheets and further JavaScripts with an S at the end of it. So I've got vendor assets, JavaScripts, and vendor assets style sheets now in my vendor folder. And what I want to do is I want to move some of the assets that ActiveAdmin put into both my app assets folder. So in my app assets folder, there is an ActiveAdmin js.coffee file. And in my app asset style sheets, there's an ActiveAdmin Sass file. So I'm going to use Git to move them because that confuses Git less when you move files around by using it. So I will move, I'm in my root, so I will move from app, assets, JavaScripts, ActiveAdmin. I will move that to my vendor assets JavaScript folder. And I will do the same thing for my style sheets to vendor assets style sheets. So those are the two commands I ran right there. A git move on app assets, JavaScript, ActiveAdmin, JS Coffee. And you could always just do this with Windows Explorer and then deal with Git later. It's just if you use Git in that way, it just makes Git more aware of the move. So if I do a git status, it's going to show me that they've been renamed. I should now be able to load up the Rails server, and if everything has gone well, the assets will no longer be present on the front end, but will still be available to ActiveAdmin on the back end. So we're back to an unstyled app, so an unstyled HTML on the front end. Let's make sure the back end did not lose its styling, and it seems to be still able to be styled. So I have vendored those assets now. They're still available to ActiveAdmin, but no longer are they polluting the application in the front end. If I view page source, we no longer have this long list of assets that are being added to the front end application. And so that means I can, inside of here, just say vendored the ActiveAdmin JS and CSS assets. And now I'm going to be done the lecture portion of today's class, so I will stop the video.